Rusty's Real Deal Baseball has to be one of the most unique games that you'll find on the 3DS, and it all revolves around Rusty, a lovable dog, who's opened up a store that isn't doing all that well. The situation in his home is even worse because it appears that his wife has left him, and Rusty offers the player a free copy of the Bat and Switch game in exchange for watching over one of his kids. From there you get to buy and play games, and gain special items that advance Rusty's story as you go along. The setup sounds completely insane, and you wouldn't be half wrong, but it possesses a certain amount of charm that simply oozes out of every aspect of the game. At first each activity is quite simple, but they all soon expand to include extra challenges that help mix up the gameplay. At first you'll find yourself at the batting nets, practicing your swing, and then in no time you'll be swatting down UFOs with your shots, and taking on various objectives that serve to add a bit of variety to just aimlessly swinging your bat. From playing as a pitcher and scouring the skies to catch the ball, to even taking on the role of an umpire and getting to call the shots for yourself. While playing through them is a lot of fun, in all honesty I had way more fun just talking to Rusty and getting to know his situation and watching the story unfold. The game is just too damn funny, and this endearing aspect soon becomes one of its most prized accomplishments. Nintendo's take on the free-to-play model was a huge success and didn't feel like a game that was trying to nickel and dime you every chance it got, and I can only hope that in the future Rusty somehow makes a return. The 3DS was well known for its huge amount of eShop exclusives, but by far one of the weirdest but surprisingly good to play was Attack of the Friday Monsters. It feels a lot like the old summer vacation games on the PlayStation, and sees you taking on the part of a young boy known as Sota, who's just moved to the outskirts of Tokyo into a small town. A place that's home to some rather strange activity that sees huge monsters appearing every Friday and disappearing just as quickly as they arrived. This prompts Sota to get to the bottom of the mystery, which sees you having to explore the town and get to know the citizens in what has to be one of the coziest games on the 3DS. Now the town itself is really charming and feels like a slice of rural life that stays true to the time period, but it's mainly the dialogue that helps create the somewhat playful atmosphere that the game gets so right, as each person you end up meeting all have their own unique personalities that really help the place feel alive. Of course there's more to it than just having to simply interact with NPCs, with various items known as glimmers being scattered throughout the environment for the player to find. Upon obtaining enough of them, you'll be rewarded with a card that plays into another aspect of the game, and that's the battle system that uses them. It operates on a rock paper scissors approach, with each of the cards being either weak or effective against another, and it ends up being pretty decent with a fair amount of challenge. Now the only issue that I had with the game is that it's just over far too soon, with it only lasting about 3 to 4 hours, and it would have been great to have seen it expanded even further, but for what it is, Attack of the Friday Monsters is definitely worth playing through. When it released, codename Steam received a pretty mixed reception, with an equal amount of people both loving and hating the pretty strange take on the strategy genre. Developed by the same minds behind Advance Wars, and whilst it's still a turn-based game of war that sees you having to move various units across the battlefield, it instead takes the action into a third-person view where you take control of the agents of Steam and have got to fight back against an invading alien force in a steampunk fantasy version of London. Now the most striking aspect of the game is no doubt its visuals that take on the look and feel of a comic. From the cutscenes to the gameplay itself, it ends up being a really stylish game, and regardless of the limitations of the hardware, it still holds up quite well to this day. On the gameplay front, it plays a lot like Valkyria Chronicles, but lacks a lot of the RPG elements that are often associated with the genre, with no leveling up of individual characters or altering their stats, and instead you increase the power of your entire team by collecting various medals scattered across each map. Thankfully though, there's plenty of variety in terms of each character's abilities and weapons that open up many different ways to approach each fight, from long-range shooters to members that excel up close and personal. It's your job to use these different tactics to your advantage and ultimately come out on top. Now if there was one downside to the gameplay, it would be just how slow the enemies' turns take, which does hurt the overall momentum of each fight, but it's not a deal breaker, so if you're like me and are fond of turn-based strategy, codename Steam definitely deserves a spot in your 3DS collection as well. When it comes to weird games on the 3DS, it doesn't get any weirder than Tokyo Crash Mobs, and it's all based on the popular game of Zuma, which sees you having to match 3 or more of the same colour to reduce the size of a circle. It takes this concept and applies it to people waiting in queues, with the characters you play as not exactly enjoying being towards the end of the pack. In fact, they hate it so much that they decide to throw the others waiting at each other in order to jump the line. Now, the gameplay is incredibly simple and solely relies on the stylus, with all of the people being dressed in various colours, and you've got to throw a colour that matches to make them disappear and move forward. It's a pretty simple premise, but what makes this so bizarre is the use of real life models intercut into the gameplay that are equally weird as they are hilarious. Add to this the cutscenes that play before each game and after, from girls falling from the sky to multiplying groups of people running towards the screen. It ends up feeling like a fucking fever dream, so much so that it keeps you playing just to see how weird it gets. A nice inclusion though is how it offers up different variations on the concept, and instead of just having to jump queues, you'll have equal amounts of different gameplay, such as having to use the gyroscope to aim and take down ninjas, and also having to use it to roll people underneath the queue as it jumps up and down. Even with these different takes on the gameplay though, it soon becomes apparent that there's not much to it, and you'll more than likely just want to stay for the weird nature of the game, but therein lies its main draw. So if you're ready to jump into one of the wildest 3DS games out there, Tokyo Crash Mobs is definitely worth taking a look at. Tomodachi Life is one of the craziest, albeit charming 3DS games out there, and it all starts out by receiving your very own island where your Mii gets to move in as a resident and you get to watch them live out their daily life. As the game progresses, it encourages you to add more Miis to the island, may that be your friends, celebrities, or fictional characters, with the possibilities being endless. Each of them get their own voice along with a personality and various traits that make them all unique, but certain aspects of each character may not be the best mix, and this is how conflict will rise on the island. Over time, the group of Miis will slowly develop relationships, may that be romantic or just being friends, and as they grow closer together, you'll have the option to match them up and eventually see their lives play out as they move in together, get married, and have children. It ends up being a pretty wholesome experience, but where the weirdness truly kicks in is with the various activities throughout the island, from shopping to RPG minigames, tabletop football, and even getting to write your own songs to perform. It ends up being a whole lot of fun to mess around with the range of different things to do, and the population will always have something to request of you, may that be helping them sneeze or keeping them company to help them out of a depressed state after being dumped. Of course, the game will mainly appeal to a certain type of player, as there's really no end to the game and it does have the potential to get repetitive, but with there being so many different possibilities, it really rewards the players that stick with it in the long run, as you watch your island grow into a paradise or certain hell. Pocket Card Jockey was yet another eShop exclusive that came from the same minds behind Pokemon, and blends together cards and horse racing into one of the strangest yet addictive games you'll find on the 3DS. At the beginning, you're thrown into the role of a jockey who isn't exactly the best out there and almost dies whilst racing, but you're soon visited by an angel that grants you the wish to use something you're good at to race horses, and that ends up being solitaire. It's quite easily the most bizarre setup I've ever come across, but the way it translates to actual gameplay is what makes it so much fun. On the bottom screen, you're presented with a pretty standard solitaire layout, whilst your horse races around the track on top, and it all comes down to how fast you can complete the games of solitaire, with each of the races usually consisting of about 3 or 4 in total. Depending on how fast you do so, and if you've made any mistakes, you're rewarded with a certain amount of stamina points that can be used to boost your horse in the race. You've also got various extra cards that can be found on the racetrack itself, such as receiving a short boost or helping to make sure your horse doesn't get tired. Now, just as important as the solitaire and racing is the care and growth of your horse, and as you continue to race, you'll slowly level up and increase its overall strength. Once you've maxed it out, you can then retire them and move on to another horse, but a nice twist is the ability to breed them, with both of the horse's traits affecting the new horse's abilities, which essentially ends up making the game endless. So if you're a fan of card games and are looking for something a bit unique, then Pocket Card Jockey is worth checking out. The eShop was home to a whole host of different experiences that never managed to land a physical release, and Gabrielle's ghostly groove proved to be one of the more enjoyable but strangest out of the bunch. Much like the name suggests, you take control of Gabrielle, who accidentally sneezes her soul out of her body, and in order to get back to herself, she's got to make her way to Monsterville and take part in something known as the ghostly groove dance in order to collect screams to get back home. It's pretty out there, and along the way you'll be making friends with other monsters like vampires, werewolves and mummies as you slowly progress through the various minigames that make up the experience. It plays out like many of the other rhythm games on the system, and as each song plays out you'll see a variety of icons appear on the screen, like you'll have to either tap to the beat of the music, flick in a certain direction, or trace around a specific shape. The main goal of course is to get as high of a score as you can, and at the end of each stage you'll be given a rank with which you'll be able to move on as long as it's higher than a C. As I mentioned earlier, you'll also be earning something known as screams, which essentially work as currency within the game and allow you to purchase new outfits and hairstyles for Gabrielle, as well as a whole range of different collectibles that really add to the longevity of the game. Even though the premise may seem a bit weird at first, the game ends up being quite wholesome, and with its amount of challenge never getting to severe levels of stress, it ends up being a great game for younger players as well as those who enjoy rhythm games in general. The 3DS wasn't really well known for its huge amount of horror games. Apart from Resident Evil making an appearance early on, it would never really receive its fair share. One game that not many people talk about though is Starship Damrey, that offers up a spooky sci-fi premise as you wake up alone, trapped inside a sleep capsule on board a starship, with no memories or recollection of how you arrived. Your only means of interacting with the outside is through the onboard computer system, which allows you to manipulate a robot through remote control. The main objective you'll find yourself having to undertake is exploring the seemingly derelict ship and solving a series of different puzzles that slowly open up the other areas to explore. Where the game truly succeeds is just how well it builds the atmosphere of the ship, and it can genuinely be eerie, making your way through the dimly lit corridors as you never quite know what could be around the corner. And with you having to scan everything in order to understand the environment around you, it creates a somewhat lonely and isolating feeling that's prevalent throughout the entirety of the game. It takes a very old school approach to how progression works as well, as there's no guidance or hint system and you're essentially left to your own devices to figure out how to proceed. This alone once again adds to the overall feeling of dread in the game, and even though at some points it can be a bit frustrating if you've overlooked any crucial items, it's generally quite straightforward and only a few will see it as an issue. When it released, it ended up being a pretty divisive game, with many stating that it was nothing more than just a narrative experience, and to be fair they wouldn't be half wrong, but thankfully it's got a great story to tell, so if you're on the lookout for something completely unique, then Starship Damrey definitely delivers. Starting out life on the GameCube, the Chibi-Robo series would receive a fair few entries across a range of different consoles, but Lash on the 3DS took the franchise in a completely different direction, and instead of the usual open-ended gameplay of having to look after the upkeep of a home, it would take Chibi into the world of 2D platformers, and even though it didn't quite reach the same highs of the games that had come before, it ends up being a decent entry that more than carries on the quirky nature of the series. You've got the standard run, jump, crouch and roll, but for anyone who's ever played Bionic Commando, Chibi's most useful move will feel instantly familiar, known as the Zip Lash. It's used for just about every action in the game, from attacking enemies to bouncing off walls, destroying blocks, attaching yourself to surfaces, grabbing items and opening chests. It's really versatile and truly earns its namesake, but what really helps distinguish it from others of its kind is the way health works in the game. As many will know, Chibi is a robot and needs to be charged in order to operate, and instead of using a bar, there's a set of numbers in the bottom of the screen that represent your amount of charge. Every move you make and ability you use depletes this amount of energy, as well as taking hits from one of the many different enemies, but scattered throughout each level are charging points that you've got to plug into to stay charged up. Unfortunately, there are a few strange decisions with the game's design, and that's mainly the vehicle segments that border on sheer frustration thanks to the charge being eaten up much faster, as well as the way in which levels are selected almost randomly, forcing you to either skip or replace them in order to progress. But on the whole, for those of you who have a fondness for the series, Lash will no doubt not disappoint. Rhythm Heaven has long been one of my go-tos when recommending rhythm games, and Megamix on the 3DS feels like a true celebration of the series, bringing many of the beloved minigames and new ideas together into one package for fans to enjoy. With its colourful presentation and massive amounts of content, it's easily one of the best games in the series, and it all begins with you being introduced to Tibi, a cute little creature who falls from the heavens and asks you to help him return by restoring the natural flow of the world. As you continue your journey, you'll come to meet a huge array of characters that love nothing more than listening to a good beat, that challenge you to take on different minigames, from having to punch flower pots, avoid cats, or swiping down enemies with a katana, with the control scheme being incredibly simple and making use of the face buttons as well as the stylus to great effect. Now, besides the main mode in the game, Megamix comes along with a whole host of extras to get stuck into as well, from extra minigames, challenges and music, as well as a sort of museum where you can look into various aspects of the game's history. By far the thing that serves to offer the most replay value though is the challenge mode, that takes all of the minigames and challenges you to get higher scores, or turns them on their head with interesting twists. Ultimately, Rhythm Heaven Megamix ends up being one of the best ways to experience the series. With its upbeat cast of characters, insanely catchy soundtrack and near endless amounts of content, it's a game that ends up being really hard to put down. Well, that does it for another video. Keep an eye out for part 2 as that will be coming up soon, so don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to get notified about new videos. You can follow me on all of the socials, which are linked below to stay up to date, and also join my growing community on Discord to meet many like-minded gamers to continue the conversation with. I'd like to give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters: Rhino, Skill Jim, Shuden, Richard, Amy, Daniel, Dio, Road Rage, Strider, Athenian Mind, Pierre, Carl, Awesome Jacket Dude, Maximus, Scott, Alfred, Terry, Ryan, Alex, GameCube Galaxy, Curse Salaryman, Fake and Paddy J for their continued support that helps make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining my Discord or supporting the channel through Patreon, you'll find all of these links down below. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I'll catch you next time.